On this week's episode of Comics Controllers, we talk about the amazingly dark and twisted world of Locke and Key. We also talk about stupid hard video games and retro games that are making a comeback. All that and more on this episode 4, Retro is the Key. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Comics and Controllers. I'm Kyle, joined by my co-host Steven.
How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good, Steven. So what's on the agenda today?
I think we wanted to discuss Locke and Key.
Locke and Key, indeed. Who are the creators on Locke and Key?
The creators are Joe Hill, who some people may know is not his real name, because his real name is actually Joseph Hillstrom King. He is the son of Stephen King.
Okay.
But he wanted to kind of stand on his own merit, so he uses the name Joe Hill to write under. And it is also by Gabriel Rodriguez.
Yeah, so Gabriel Rodriguez does the art on that. So,
right.
Just a little background for people who don't know about Locke and Key. It actually just concluded December 18th. Yeah, just less than a week ago almost. And what it's about is there's a family called the Locke family, and it's 3 children, Tyler, Bode, and Kinsey. And so there's a little bit of spoiler, but bad stuff happens to their family. Them and their mother go to live in a house where their father grew up, and I think it's his brother, still kind of lives there or still owns it.
Yeah, Duncan.
Yeah. And so, a lot of crazy stuff goes on there. The house is called the Key House, in fact. And it's in Lovecraft, Massachusetts, I believe, on
That's
Little
correct.
Island.
Yep.
It's a really small community. So when I first started reading it, I'm thinking Lovecraft, so I start thinking, okay, Cthulhu stuff, but there's not really any Cthulhu stuff in there. I think the extent of Lovecraft is just the name of the actual city or little town they live in.
Well, I think there's little hints to it, and we, if anybody reads a lot of Stephen King or some of Joe Hill stuff, there are definitely the Lovecraft style influences in their work. So I think it's more of a tone and a motif than it is actually taking from Lovecraft.
Yeah, if it is kind of, I think a lot of times when people do Lovecraft stuff, like I've read a lot of the Cthulhu mythos type comics they've done, and majority of them are way over the top. Like they have dimensional shamblers and Cthulhuoid monsters coming out of walls and like brutally, raping people or murdering whole cities of stuff, and it's just so gruesome and out there that it's not even so much horror as it's just gore.
Yeah, all those stories, your characters either end up dead, insane, or probably wishing they had died instead.
Yeah, exactly. But in this one, there's the hints of bad stuff going on in the house and around them, and there's weird little magic things, but for the most part, most people don't even realize it's going on.
I do think, I haven't read the whole series, of course, but I do believe that one of the 3 kids will either end up insane or dead by the end of it. And a lot of the stuff that's going on, Tyler actually seems to be handling a lot of it pretty well, and Bode, I think, just because he's so young and he doesn't realize how crazy this stuff is yet, he's handling it. But like Kinsey, is the good example of someone freaking out.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like Bode, who's the littlest kid, he's the one who kind of starts encountering some of the stuff at first that's kind of odd. So one of the reasons it's called the Key House is because there are keys that do different things when used on different doors within the house. Like there's one key that's called the Ghost Key, and if you use it on a certain door and you walk through the door, your soul leaves your body, and you can travel around as a ghost.
It's really cool because it's a plot mechanic later on. You can go to someone or to anywhere if you think about it hard enough. And I love that at one point he's trying to get to one location, and he thinks that the ghost door didn't work because it didn't take him to the right location, but he doesn't realize he's looking at what he was thinking about.
Exactly. So yeah, there's the ghost key, and then there's one called the Anywhere key, which you put it in a lock, you open the door with it, and it takes you literally anywhere that you think of.
Yeah, and that seems to work on any door also.
But for the most part, like the stuff like that, it's kind of interesting to see how it's done because it's very unique things. Like at one point, there's a key that lets people do stuff with people's minds, and it's kind of like telepathy that you would see in any kind of comic or any superhero comic. But the way it's handled and done is so different that it was a really unique concept to me.
Yeah, it's done almost in the scientific sense, but hey, we're still in a comic, so let's keep the imagination level up. And I think it was handled really well.
Yeah, I really like the way that they handle the magic, and they also there's some stuff that's happened in the past that they keep referring to within the series, but people don't really remember it, and they hint at the reason is because as people get older, their minds
makes you forget.
Well, the house makes you forget, but adults' minds get filled with worse and more stuff, so it clouds this stuff in the past. So adults who had things happen to them when they were kids, they don't remember a lot of it.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot here in the past, and the main antagonist, Dodge, even at one point says to Bode, little kids think they're always the beginning of the story, but there's so much that's happened here before that you don't even know about, and I'm really hoping, and I'm sure it does, I'm hoping the comic goes further back into the Locke family and what happened before with their father and why he forgot and everything, because I think that's really interesting. Like, they talk about their family owning like half of that island, or maybe not half, but a large portion of the island.
Yeah.
And they never explain how or anything like that, so I'm hoping they go further into all of that.
Yeah, I think some of the later series talk about that. So the way the series is written, it's kind of odd. It's not like it was a massive ongoing series, but the way that they did it would be they would do 6 issues of a story that's called Locke and Key. Like the first one's called Locke and Key, Welcome to Lovecraft. And those 6 issues came out, and then they put them in a trade, and then about 6 months later, they would do another story that was 6 issues. And they did 2 or 3 like that. And, for the most part, when one of these series was going on, they're coming out back to back, or they're coming out within at least a month of each other, and then there'd be a gap. And then the last couple series all came out in a row. I guess like he wanted to finish it up.
Right.
But when it's said and done, I think there's supposed to be 6 trades, maybe 7 if they collect the one-shots, right. But 6 trades to get the full story.
And I know he has been writing novels while he's been working on this, because I believe he's had 3 major release novels, so he probably needed the time to finish the novels, and then once those were out of the way, decided to go ahead and wrap up Locke and Key.
Well, I kind of also wonder if part of it was because it's put out by IDW. If it's IDW, especially when the first one came out, you may have this 36 issue thing, but we're not going to license it for 36 issues. We only going to do it for 6, and that's probably because IDW is a smaller company.
That it is, and they're a smaller company, and I mean, one of their biggest things right now is like the Transformers series. So they may have, not wanted to, like you said, take a giant risk at first with an unproved IP.
Yeah, because I know even Marvel and DC are reluctant to do that. At least they used to be. I think the last one I remembered something like that happened with when I was still reading was The Boys.
Yeah.
Originally it came out under Vertigo, and after 6 issues, they were just like, no. Because I guess it was too raw.
It was Wildstorm, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was Wildstorm, that's right. And they moved it, and then it went to Boom?
Dynamite.
Dynamite.
Went to Dynamite, yeah. DC didn't like the amount of blood and sex and drugs, and so they did. I won't knock DC in that, because they were very open to allowing him to move the series, and they didn't fight him on it or anything. True. And usually DC and Marvel are big about stuff like that, but I think they realized, they're like, you know what, we thought we could handle this and we can't. So
yeah, that's true. And somebody like Garth Ennis, who's a pretty big name writer, you don't want to piss off to where he refuses to come write for your company again, especially when he had a lot of stuff he's done with them.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it too was right before The Boys, he was doing a lot of those I don't remember the name of the series right now, but they were World War II series that although they were bloody, it wasn't like his older stuff. It wasn't like, Preacher-esque stuff.
Yeah, but
he went back to form.
Yeah, they were war series though. That's a little bit different, They weren't like in The Boys where people are running around raping people to death or ripping
Right.
people's arms off and stuff like that.
And I think they were expecting more something like his war series, because he had been doing those for a while then, and then he wanted to do a series, as he put it, to out-preacher Preacher. So he went back to the old ways.
Maybe so. But yeah, IDW's who does Locke and Key.
Right. And I like this comic for several reasons. The setting is great. It's funny because you can tell he grew up where his father lives, because a lot of the settings are the same. And, they say, write what you know. So he sets it in Massachusetts. He writes kids very well, just like his dad does. Some writers just don't seem to grasp writing children. Either they make them too much just like miniature adults, or they make them too childlike. There's a very happy medium that realistically makes kid characters feel more alive.
Yeah,
and I think he finds that really well.
Well, yeah, because you have the two older children, Kinsey and Tyler, are constantly dealing with the tragedy that took place in the first couple issues, and so that is still something that they're dealing with in the second series.
Mm-hmm.
Now the little kid Bode, he's handled a little bit better, but I think younger children do tend to handle things better, and it's really well written to see how these three children all handle it differently. Tyler blames himself, Kinsey's an emotional wreck, and Bode's just kind of, the family thinks he's gone into some kind of almost fantasy world to avoid the problem,
right?
But he's actually dealing with this stuff that's really happening. These keys that let him become ghost and this demon thing living in a well house. So
I believe I read that there were 6 weeks in between the first two trades.
Okay.
Because in the actual comic it just says weeks later, but I vaguely remember reading that says there was 6 weeks in between.
Mm-hmm.
And Bode, I love that he is the only one in the family for the entire first 6 issues who actually sees the main antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're so focused on what they can see, which is this other antagonist that is the perpetrator of all the stuff that they know.
Yeah.
So also it does back and forth very well. It jumps back and forth between the present and the past, and a lot of time it does it a lot, and a lot of times that can really take away from a story, or it can become really jarring. But I think they do it in a really cool way, and one of the ways that they do that is what's called dialogue links, where someone will say a piece of dialogue in the past and it'll go to a flashback, or vice versa, and somebody will either be saying the exact same thing or experiencing an issue with what's going on in that piece of dialogue. And so it flows very well. The flow of the comic is nice.
Yeah, it does, for one, like you said, that jumps through time and through memories. And I remember there in the first trade, there's a scene where Tyler is sitting outside of like a funeral, and he's thinking about something, and it's kind of weird at first because you see the person whose funeral it is talking, and it's not like it's shaded anything different like that, and he's talking to somebody else, and he's discussing what should happen if he has to ever die.
Mm-hmm.
And this little kid's sitting there listening, and Tyler's still sitting there as a teenager, and I start realizing, oh, that's supposed to be him remembering it happening in this same room that he's currently sitting in.
Yeah, because the only difference was that the characters who were in the memory had that little bit of that almost like sepia shading to them. There was a little bit dull
very
brown
faint
over them, but like you said, it was very faint. It was done really well.
Yeah, it was really good, and I think that the pacing works out very well too, and also the moving between characters, because there are several characters that you're constantly looking at. You're looking from the children's perspective, and you're looking at the antagonist perspective sometimes too.
The first issue of the second trade starts with a character you've never met before. He's never been mentioned before. But in one issue, you see his entire story and how he connects to the Locke family and to the antagonist. And it is done really well. Because they, in one issue, they give him an entire background. They make you feel for the character. And by the time that issue ends, you're like, well, that sucks. I wanted to see more of him,
Yeah. But I'll say that Steven recommended Locke and Key to me, and somebody else, I was asking somebody else, I'm like, hey, I'm kind of reading comics again. What's something you think I should read? And they're like, oh, if you've never read Locke and Key, you should totally read it. It's really good. So, and I'd recommend it to anybody out there. Locke and Key is really good. If I think it's still going on Comixology, you can actually get the trades for like $5.99.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long that lasts, but
yeah, me neither. I think it lasts until the new year, so you still got a couple of days, I believe. And even if it's not on sale, they were pretty cheap. I think it was like $10.99 or something. But you should totally check out. At least get the first trade, see what you think, and then if you're like me, you'll buy the other 5 or the other 4 that are out. The 6th one's not out yet.
Right. I felt bad because I read the first 3 issues because I had heard who was writing it, and I'll admit I felt kind of bad that it took for me hearing who the author was to get interested in it, because once I actually read the premise, I was like, oh, I got to read this.
Well, sometimes you need that though. Sometimes, like if you told me, great example, back in the day, somebody would say you should read The Flash. I'm like, I don't want to read The Flash. I don't really read any DC. They're like, Jeff Johns is writing. I'm like, oh, well, I might want to read it. Then it's probably really good, and it was.
Yeah. But for me, I read the first 3 issues, and then I didn't have access to the other issues at the time, so I went and started reading other stuff. And then I read an article about how they were possibly turning it into there was a movie discussed at first, and then there was TV shows, and I think you were the one who told me that Fox actually did a pilot and everything.
Yeah, so like several companies have owned the rights to a TV show for it, but Fox is the only one that ever made a pilot. The pilot aired at the 2011 Comic-Con in San Diego, and it was really well received, but Fox didn't greenlight it. But the last thing I saw talking about it was that MTV was interested in it, in buying it from Fox to maybe do something with it. And I think it would work well as a TV show. I don't think it would be a good movie. It's just too much going on for a movie. It's too much, yeah.
But that's what got me back into reading it, and that's why when you asked me for suggestions, I was rereading through the first 3 and then moving on to the others, and I really enjoy the tone, the mood, the setting, the whole atmosphere of the comic with the characters and everything. And I feel so bad because I'm really thinking these characters are not going to do well by the end of this.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if, because people die a lot. I mean, not a lot of people die, but there are deaths of characters that are very common or very used a lot within the plot, and suddenly they'll just be killed. But it's not like they're killed for no reason. There's usually a legitimate reason why they died. Right. But yeah, I could see one of the kids getting it.
That's a really good example though of a comic that I like that. I don't. When you read Spider-Man, it doesn't matter even if they kill off Spider-Man, or if they do what they're doing right now, where they temporarily switch him with somebody else. Which I will actually say is one of the bigger things going on right now, and I'm glad to see they had the quote unquote the balls to do so. But
yeah, because isn't it like Doc Ock in his body now or something?
Yes, yeah, okay. And that's a really long and convoluted story, but it's worth reading.
Yeah,
but
I've had a lot of people tell me that.
Yeah. But I've only read the first trade, but it was really good. But the thing with any comic, especially that's not dealing with like a major superhero, where there's a status quo, is I like anything that I actually feel like I should worry for the characters' lives, or that this comic wouldn't surprise me if halfway through they killed off the 3 kids and brought in 3 new kids.
Well, I mean, I don't think they would do that. It's called Locke and Key, and they are the Locke family.
Right, and I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that it wouldn't surprise me if there was a major change.
I mean, I truthfully don't think a kid's gonna die until, if he does die, it's gonna be near the end.
It's gonna be near the end, yeah.
I could see their uncle or their mom dying.
Yeah, easily. But I guess what I'm saying is, I like, even if it's not true, I like to believe that there's a chance that something major could happen, and that I could be just one issue away from the whole story shaking up.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, that is good. Like, it's reading superhero comics, you kind of get complacent. You're like, what are they gonna do? Kill him? He's gonna come back.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, some of those characters are basically have get out of heaven free cards at this point.
Yeah. When I was reading, I think it was Secret Invasion, I was really enjoying it, and then at the end, spoiler alert, they kill off the Wasp, and
she's already alive again.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't even know how she came back. I don't really care. It was just one of those things that when I read it, number one, I didn't care for that character that much because at the time I wasn't reading any books that she was actually in. Although I was reading a couple of Avengers books, she was in one of the other random Avengers books, and I was like, oh, well, she'll be back. And I kept reading.
And to me, it's a cop-out, too, when they kill a character. Like, it's not really, like, a major... I mean, the Wasp is probably fairly major for the Avengers stuff. But
Sure.
Was it in Civil War, they kill, like, Black Goliath or whatever it is? Like
Goliath, yeah.
I mean, seriously, that guy had not been in a comic since those, and no one knew and no one cared. It was just like, he's dead. It was like, okay, I didn't know he was alive until this issue. So,
They tried to make it bigger because it was Thor's clone. What did they end up calling him? Chlor? Something stupid?
It's just a cop-out. If you're going to kill somebody, it's like, to me, too, I think people use the Joker as like in DC, it's like, I need to kill a lot of people to get a point across. I'll just have the Joker as the bad guy, and he'll kill like thousands of people, and it'll be shock value. It's not a shock value anymore. It's the Joker. You're going to write him killing thousands of people. It's not going to surprise me, and it's not really going to make me think any differently.
That's why when we were picking, for one of the sites I write for, we were picking, comics of the year, and I actually picked the Penguin single-issue comic, because we've seen the Joker be a badass. We've seen the Joker go crazy, but I thought it was really neat to finally have a focus on some of the villains that I don't think get a lot of time, and you get to see what happens when they get pushed too far, so...
Yeah. I agree. Well, so for those of you out there, Locke and Key, read it. It's really good.
So I've heard that you've been getting kind of frustrated lately with some video games.
I have. So Steven has been playing the Angry Video Game Nerds game. I'm not sure the full title of it.
It's the Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures.
Okay, so Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures. If you don't know who the Angry Video Game Nerd is, he's basically a YouTuber who rants and raves about old school games for the most part. And he's been around for a while. And he can be pretty funny.
He's pre-YouTube, yeah.
He's pretty funny. So they made a game that's in the style of an old 8-bit or 16-bit platformer for him, and it is one of those games that's stupid hard.
It's 8-bit graphics, but it's got the dynamic color schemes or whatever, so it almost looks like 16-bit, but the actual like characters and everything are in, I believe, in 8-bit from what I read.
Okay.
The Angry Video Game Nerd, if you've never seen his videos, very much worth watching. What's great for the fans is that they incorporated a lot of the stuff from his videos into the game, because the game was done by Screw Attack. I don't know who the names of the actual developers were, but Screw Attack funded most of it, and they had a lot to do with it because that's whose site he is primarily associated with. But it's a fun game. It's a difficult game, and since I was telling you about it, and I was telling you how much fun I was having with it, I wanted you to be able to enjoy it also.
Yeah, I played it. Alright, so first off, it is not my type of game. I'll say that. I don't like games that are stupid hard, that really have no plot. Like, I want a plot. Like, if it's stupid hard and there's a plot, I may be willing to play it longer. But I don't play video games competitively. I don't play video games to get angry. I play them because I want to relax. And so when a game makes me not relax, then I'm just not going to want to keep playing it. But I did play through a couple levels of it. And, like, sometimes it's deceptive. Like, you don't think it's hard. And then suddenly there's, lasers flying out of the ground, firing from the sides, and these platforms that move, and every other platform you can't step on because it just kills you immediately no matter how much health you have.
Everything you hate in video games all in one nice little package. That's
pretty much what it is. It's everything you completely hate about old 8-bit Nintendo games that were so hard, they put it all in one single game. Stupid bosses, stupid levels, glitches, and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, they make fun of all of that stuff. And here's the thing, when older video games, NES and SNES era, it was hard to do a lot of story through the middle because of just the advancement of the technology and stuff like that. And so they do this one very much like the old style, where at the beginning you get a quick little, images to explain, like, here's the setup, and then they throw you into the story, and you don't really get much of story because, it's the gameplay. And a lot of people prefer that. I know when I play Metal Gear Solid, my first thought is, I want to start this game, but I know I'm going to have to sit through a cutscene, which is probably going to be about 30 to 40 minutes long.
But Metal Gear Solid
actually get to play.
Is the other extreme. Like, Angry Video Game Nerd would be what, extremely minimalist story. Metal Gear Solid is a movie that you get to interact with. I mean, it's up there with, like, what do you call them? The, Beyond Two Souls.
Oh, Heavy Rain.
And Heavy Rain, where it's just like, you just click a button. You don't really do anything. There's no real actual gameplay.
But see, to me, Heavy Rain, I actually felt like I was getting to do more. I actually, because of the consistency of my interactions, whereas their legitimate parts, I believe it's Metal Gear Solid 4, I just put the controller down.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was no reason for me to hold it. It was a 41-minute long cutscene.
The ending is 41 minutes, I know, at least. I mean, there's probably only 4 hours of gameplay in the game.
This is why I never beat that game.
That's why I've never played any of them since then. I've refused to even play it. Like, people are like, new Metal Gear? I'm like, why? Who cares? If I want to watch a movie, I'll go put a movie in my Blu-ray player. I won't put a game in.
Right. Metal Gear Solid is great. I actually played 2, and it's Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah.
And then once they got to 3, which 3 is really good, don't get me wrong, but I remember sitting down and playing that. It's like a 15 or 16 minute cutscene at the beginning of 3, and then I got to play, and then there was another cutscene, and I was like, ah.
What's the guy's name? Kojima, who makes it?
Yeah, Hideo Kojima.
But so these kind of games, like Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures, where it's like old style platformers that are stupid hard. There's a lot of those that have come up though lately.
Yeah, and it is, and the idea is that it's taking you back to that style, like I believe we discussed Ninja Gaiden at one point, how
yes,
it's if you don't learn the patterns and if you don't develop the muscle memory, you're never really going to get far, and you just have to keep at it and keep trying and keep dying and keep going.
Yeah, well, that's how those guys, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary, I think it's A Fistful of Quarters, about the guy who broke the Donkey Kong record, or tried to break it.
I did see that, yeah.
The reason he got so good is he just memorized the pattern of how the barrels went. He had a machine at home where he had marked out how the barrels jumped, and that's how he learned where to stand and stuff. Because that's how those old games were. It was all pattern based.
Yep, it's all about the hitbox.
The newer ones, I mean, the Angry Video Game Nerd Adventure is a lot about patterns, but some of these other ones aren't necessarily like Rogue Legacy or Spelunky. They have the old style of, we just put a stupid number of like monsters on the board that move really fast and hit really hard.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, seeing as how I, decided to make you suffer through Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures. You decided to show me Rogue's Legacy, which I had heard about before, but I'd never had the opportunity to play. And may I say, I'm enjoying it, but not as much as I probably should be, because...
Yeah.
Oh, God.
For those who don't know, Rogue Legacy, what it is you play a knight. And you have to go into a castle. I think you're just trying to save a princess, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And if you die, one of your heirs, like one of your kids, comes in. But the problem is that like these are all knights, so they're probably all like inbred. So your kid may be colorblind, so now the game is in black and white.
Right. Yeah.
Or your kid may have like, sometimes it'll be something that doesn't really affect anything, like they're bald. That doesn't really do anything.
Well, like there's one that's where it's vertigo, so like randomly the map will flip upside down for a minute.
Yeah.
Jesus. What's the other one?
There's one that's nearsighted, so like if he can only see clearly around him and everything else is really blurry.
There's one that can't jump very high.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I think one of them has like irritable bowel syndrome. I don't know what it does, but I remember that's one of them.
I have not run into that.
But then every now and then you'll get somebody who's just ridiculous. Like you'll get someone who's just like super strong and everything.
Right. They all have They all have their individual weapons. Mm-hmm. And what is good is the more you die, you can make your characters more powerful because there's upgrades and stuff you can buy. But every time you have to re-enter the castle, death is waiting at the castle door to take all your damn money.
Yeah, so it's one of these things like you want to try to get far so you can, if you die, you can upgrade. But then when you get to the door, death takes money from you because you have to pay to get back in. But it's like Castlevania, bad guys with like giant skulls flying around that take up the entire screen, or things that can fire energy through walls and stuff like that.
But you're right, it's frustrating because their entire, there's parts where you're like, well, this isn't that bad, and then you walk in the next room and there are spikes on the ceiling, spikes on the floor, and there are enemies that shoot 4 or 8 directions depending. And
don't the rooms change each death?
Yeah. What it is the castle changes it with each death. And then you have this architect where if you like the way a castle is set up and you want to try to memorize it, you can pay money to have him lock the castle down. But if death keeps taking all your money, that's not always an option.
Yeah, like if you die constantly, like in the first 2 rooms, it's going to be really difficult because you're not going to have enough money to actually upgrade or lock down the castle, or you might not even have really a good bit to get in.
Yeah, like I still haven't messed around much. I messed around with the blacksmith a little bit, but there's also like an enchanting person that I never have enough money to really do much with her. So
yeah,
I'll get to it eventually.
But yeah, so these kind of games are popping up, and some of it I wonder if it's because the whole retro gaming thing. People are like, oh, I remember these games. They were so hard. I remember how stupid hard Ninja Gaiden was with the stupid eagles that would just, you couldn't get around and you're just dead from them.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I wonder if that's why they're popping back up, or if maybe there's just, these are indie games and they're easier to make than these AAA titles, so people can kind of crap out these little games like this.
That's the thing, though. I don't think they're crapping them out. At least, in my opinion, the ones that I've had experiences with, because I watched a bunch of playthroughs of Spelunky and, a couple of other newer ones. But, I think these are games that you don't have to sink as much money into because they're not, giant FMVs and, massive engines. They're easy, fun. Almost anyone could build these type of games as long as you knew a little bit about programming. But I think there's a form of originality here. We live in a gaming world where everything is the new Call of Duty or the new whatever, or this is the sequel, the 15th sequel to Dynasty Warriors. Which don't get me wrong, I love Dynasty Warriors, but one comes out like every year, and I'm glad to see.
Making those.
I know at least there was, I looked at all the video games that are coming out in 2014 that are known, and I believe there was 1 Dynasty Warriors and 1 Samurai Warriors coming out. So.
Wow.
But the point is that there's a sense of originality, I think, to these, and not having that extra weight on the developer's shoulders of, well, you have to make this amount of money to justify us paying this much to put in this game, and people are expecting this. I think they have a little bit more freedom. They come up with some more original ideas. They do some very neat things. And I don't know. I really enjoy them. I recently spoke about how much I really enjoyed what they were also doing, even though this doesn't go with the originality thing. DuckTales Remastered. They came out with that.
Old games.
Yeah, they came out with that. They didn't really change much of the mechanics. They kind of touched it up a little bit, but not too much. And they really just redid the art. They had the original voice actors come in that were all still alive and do the voices, and added a little bit to the game. But for the most part, it was the same game. It was just, a little bit better.
Well, and they did that too with Turtles in Time Reshelled, right? They just redid Turtles in Time.
They did, and a lot of people didn't like the art style on that one because it was more of the CGI kind of art instead of the traditional art, but the gameplay was pretty much the same, and I still play through and really enjoyed it. I love Turtles in Time.
But you were talking about like they're redoing these old games, there's not a lot of originality, but there are people, especially through Kickstarter, they're kickstarting the guys who made some of these old games to make newer versions of it. One of them that I kickstarted that's already come out was the Shadowrun Returns. They were going to make a follow-up to the original Shadowrun game. I think it was on the NES or SNES. I don't remember what system.
I think it was SNES, but don't quote me on that.
Could have been the Genesis. It was one of those in that time period, but they remade it on the computer, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I mean, it wasn't anything groundbreaking. It wasn't anything stunning to see, but the story was good. The gameplay was fun. And then another one that actually got funded was the guys who made River City Ransom.
Yeah.
And they're going to do a new River City Ransom, which I know a lot of people were super ecstatic
to
hear.
I will definitely try that one. I played the original and I liked it. I didn't play it as much as I did a lot of other games, but I would definitely try a new version of that.
See, I never played the original River City Ransom. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Never played it. I mean, maybe this will probably be good. I mean, enough people liked it, put enough money into it. So
and we also have Mighty Number 9 coming out, which is a great example of a company not letting the developers make a new Mega Man game. So the guy went to Kickstarter to do his, what he calls a spiritual successor, which is Mighty Number 9.
Yeah. Because what happens with a lot of these is that these companies own them, and they're just like, Mega Man, I can crap out one of these games. It doesn't matter. It's got Mega Man on it. Somebody's going to buy it. And that's a problem. I mean, same thing with, and I don't think Nintendo so much does this, but a lot of those Nintendo products, you put Legend of Zelda on something, buy it. People are going to buy it.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, I'm actually excited about it, but we were talking about Hyrule Warriors. You know, even if some people don't like the gameplay, some people are going to buy it just because it has Zelda on it.
Yeah. But, and not all studios just make a bad game and put something on there, but other studios will. And that happens a lot. I mean, a great example is EA with the sports games, like Madden and NCAA. They'll just... those games don't really change much over the years. But they know that it doesn't matter because people are going to buy it every year, so they don't really have to put a lot of effort into it.
I think the best example of that is the archery game that came out for Zelda. I don't know if you remember that one.
I do. I don't even remember the name of it, though.
I don't either at the moment, but
it had like a special accessory you could mount your controller in and everything that made it look like a crossbow.
Yeah, I just remember people tearing that thing apart.
Resident Evil's another good example. You know, they've had so many Resident Evil games that really weren't part of the actual Resident Evil stuff. They were like these weird offshoots, like Outbreak. Yeah. And then they had a couple other ones that were like that.
Outbreak at least tried to be creative. They tried to be inventive with the online back when the online wasn't as big of a key, because you could do the 4-player online. Resident Evil Outbreak was basically the earliest version of Left 4 Dead, but not as fun. And because you had 4 people all trying to solve a situation. But the best example with Resident Evil is when they did the arcade-style shooters for Resident Evil, like Dead Aim and those
Survivor. Were the other ones.
Dead Aim had somewhat redeeming qualities, but Resident Evil Survivor was like the worst thing ever.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that's like, hey, you know, it'd be cool, House of the Dead, but we'll just make it using Resident Evil because it's the same thing.
And that right at that point, it was the Resident Evil franchise was like almost the height of its popularity. See,
my question then is, at what point are you no longer like making games for your franchise that are actually going to benefit it, and does it cross over into actually making games that are going to like harm your property? I mean, you can just keep making these games with these titles on there, but eventually people aren't going to buy it, and then there goes your entire property. You know, Capcom loses Resident Evil because they've just made such bad games and no one wants to buy them anymore.
Well, I think there's it's a risk-reward thing, and I'll explain this by using Halo as an example. And I know you're not a big Halo fan, but when they were developing Halo Wars was originally, it's an RTS Halo game. It originally was not meant to even be a Halo game, but they worked it out, and they were like, okay, this will sell a lot more if you put the Halo name on it. But they actually made a really good RTS game, and it just happened to be set in the Halo world. But then now they have this new one, which is the mobile game, which is called Spartan Assault, which is basically Smash TV but with a Master Chief, or with a Spartan. And a lot of people kind of knock that one a little bit, and I've heard good and good and bad reviews on that one. But I think you've got people who want to still use the world that they've created in the franchise and get a little bit of money off of it, but some of them actually work. A great example is a lot of people love Mass Effect. I'm not the biggest fan, but a lot of people love Mass Effect and keep saying they would love to see like an RTS of Mass Effect or something like that set in the world, but maybe not like the past 3 games that they've just received.
Yeah. You know, that kind of makes me think back to some older games too, from Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 2, and also Legend of Zelda 2.
Yeah.
Both of those games were not originally meant to be those products or of those property lines, but they sold, you know, the first Zelda and the first Super Mario Brothers did so well, they were like, just make them for that. Just slap it on there and people will buy it. Well, they did.
Yeah. And with Mario Brothers 2, you know, they actually made a sequel, but they thought it was too hard for, you know,
American
audiences. I still argue that because they eventually released it, and I played it because it's the Lost Levels or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, so they did that. And then, you know, there's the flip side of that where they were making Final Fight to actually be Street Fighter 2, and then Capcom was basically like, no, we don't want you to go that direction. We're going to slap another name on this and make this its own thing. You need to go develop us another game.
Yeah.
So, as we were talking about Halo, I just have to bring up, there are AAA games also that are kind of doing the remaster thing. Like, Halo had a remastered version of the first one.
Kingdom Hearts did.
Kingdom Hearts had their HD collections, Silent Hill. There's a ton of them. I think the Hitman franchise recently did something like that too. Mm-hmm. And I know it's cool to have these updated versions, but I feel like there's some of these games like I've bought this game on almost every platform it's ever been out on. I'm kind of, if my PS4 would play PS3 games, I wouldn't have to rebuy this. But
yeah, I understand that. That's one of my things. Like I see people say all the time, it's like, well, these new consoles aren't backwards compatible. Well, there's reasons for that. Tech-wise, it's not feasible to have these things be small and affordable because the new consoles have a different architectural framework than the original ones. So you would have to basically put an Xbox 360 inside of an Xbox One, or you have to put a PS3 inside of a PS4. The only one that hasn't done all the changes is pretty much the what do you call it? The Wii U. Because you can play Wii games on there. Maybe you can play GameCube games too. I don't know, because GameCube games played in the Wii.
Yeah.
I don't think you can, though.
I don't think so. Here's the other problem, and I don't know all the ins and outs of this because, one, I'm not a lawyer, and two, I'm not in the gaming industry, but I've also heard that there are a lot of these games, third-party games, that you have to pay licensing for if you wanted to put them on another console. And that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. Because to make games, you have to pay licensing fees. So it's like, why don't I need to pay this licensing fee a second time? I've already paid it for one console. I don't want to pay it for another. It's one of those, like, you get a cost-benefit analysis guy in there, and he's like, well, I made this much money on this thing, and at this point it's considered a classic. We could just put it on this, and I'm sure we'll make at least as much as it costs for that, if not a lot more. Hence Kingdom Hearts.
When the 360 came out, they had an emulator system in the 360.
Yes.
And that's why when people were trying to play their Xbox One games on the 360, I will never forget, like, some of them played fine, and then you had games like Ninja Gaiden Black that I tried to play on the 360, and the lag was so horrible. It was almost impossible to play it. And so they had to release like 2 patches just to fix it. It's
basically just a port. It's like porting this stuff from a console to a PC, and a lot of times it doesn't work well. It's because they're just saying, like, well, we'll just assume it works, maybe do a little bit of tweaking here and there. And then when it doesn't, they're like, oh crap, we need to do this. We need to put this code in the fizzle waggle and mess with the snoggle woggle over here so it works better. But yeah, I think these kind of 8 and 16-bit style games that are super hard, I don't think they're a fad. I think there's something that we're going to see a lot more of, especially as indie developers are becoming a bigger thing, and there are more and more of them out there. I mean, at Kickstarter alone, you can go and see tons and tons of games that people are designing and making. I mean, I've Kickstarted a bunch of them myself.
And it amazes me how many of them I'm actually like, well, I would play that. You know, I don't know if I want to give money to it, but I would definitely, if that was a real game, I would play that.
Yeah, and see, that's one of the things with me. It's like I'll go and I Kickstarted a bunch of stuff, and then you don't really think about how long it takes. There's still things I Kickstarted a year and a half ago that haven't been made. They're still being produced, so I still get updates on it, but it's like, well, not as excited about it now as I was then.
Right, yeah.
So.
No, and I agree. Mighty Number 9 is one that I helped kickstart, and I don't kickstart much, but that one is going to take a while, but I know it's coming, so I'm okay with that, and I'm always looking for stuff that I want to help donate to and help, but I think that same way that you were just talking about, where it's like, well, I know this isn't going to be an immediate gratification, so.
Mm-hmm. All right, so final verdict: would you recommend the Angry Video Game Nerd to adventures to people?
I would, but my first question would be: are you the type of person that throws controllers?
If the answer is yes, then no.
It's probably not for you. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll be honest, I've gotten to the end boss on several of the stages, but I've only beaten one stage.
Yeah,
I refuse to go down to easy. I won't do it. I won't do it.
Yeah, no, I played on normal. I beat one boss, evidently on the easiest level. I didn't know. I just happened to randomly choose it.
I'm not saying it's the easiest level, but that's the one that they recommend that you beat first, because that's also where you get... one thing we didn't discuss about Angry Video Game Nerd is there are other characters that you can find that you can switch between. And so that's the stage where you find the guitar guy, and his ability is that his stuff that he shoots, his sound waves or whatever, go through walls, and you need him for other stages. How many of the characters did you find?
I don't think I found him.
Oh wow! Okay, well the game is much easier if you if you go.
I guess I should try to find him.
You have to explore different parts of the stage. You have to kind of think like an old school game. It's like, well, I don't know what happens if I drop down here, but there might be something down here. And if you find a couch in that stage that you beat, he's hiding behind the couch because it's something that they did in some of the episodes, and he is really cool because he doesn't jump as high and he's not as quick.
I remember watching you play with him on on your videos.
Yeah, there's also Mike Matei, who can see like hidden power ups and stuff like that, and he has a lightsaber.
Yeah, I remember watching him too.
Yeah, and then the other guy is I don't remember his name, but he's the giant pile of feces that you can play as.
That reminds me. The thing I'll end this on about that game is that, well, I agree with Steven. If you're one that's going to throw controllers, it might not be the best for you. Also, if you're somebody who has a problem with language, you should not play this game. Because pretty much it's constantly random animal excreting random bodily fluid, curse word, curse word, curse word. And that's pretty much like whenever something happens, that's what goes across the screen. It doesn't bother me. I actually don't even look at it because I don't think it's funny because it's just basically like a 5-year-old cursing. It's just like throwing words together. They don't make sense.
It's again something from the show that they incorporated in, and some of it to me, I'm not necessarily that, but like when he comes into the stage, he'll say certain things, or when he runs into certain enemies, like when he gets to the surfboard on the Silver Surfer surfboard. I mean, because I've seen all the episodes, and so
I'm not really a big fan of it.
Right, a lot of it's references, or it's references to older video games. Maybe not even to his episodes, but it's a reference to horrible older video games. So I don't know. But whenever I do a playthrough video of Angry Video Game Nerd, I have several videos of me playing through it, and I always put it at the bottom. I'm like, there's a strong language warning here.
Yeah. So if you like those kind of games, you don't mind some language, give it a shot. It's cheap. Yep. And it's probably on sale still. So
yeah, that's the last thing I was going to bring up. The Steam sale is usually where I pick up a lot of these older or indie games or whatever, because when the Steam sale is going on, you can usually find them for under $5 easy. And if you wait for them to actually be on the flash sales, $2 or
$3.
Yeah, there was a game the other day, Guacamole or whatever it was.
Guacamole, that's really good.
Yeah. That was like 2 cents the other day.
Yeah,
because it was a 90-something% discount, and I was like, oh, okay.
That game's fun actually because it has like a funny little plot and it's decent gameplay, and it's not stupid hard, but it's platformer still.
Well, now you're making me wish I had bought it. I didn't know enough about the game, and I should have gotten it for 2 cents, but still, I'll keep an eye on it. But this year, my biggest problem with the Steam sale is a lot of their big deals, which is the daily deals, the ones they only do every 24 hours, because they have the flash deals, which are every 8 hours, and then they have the community picks, or community choice. But those have been fine, but the daily deals have not been that exciting for me. And I think it's because, one, the stuff that's on sale that's like, wow, that's a really good deal, I either have already bought when it was on sale at some other point.
Yep.
Or, like, I really wanted to pick up Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, but it was never below, like, $35 or whatever.
Yeah, so for me, my biggest problem is some of the stuff I want won't go on sale because it's still new. Like, it's been out within the last 2 or 3 months,
right?
So it's not likely to go on sale, and it was cheap to begin with. The other problem is your first problem. I already own it. Like, I bought them on, like, the fall sale or the summer sale, and there hasn't really been anything else. Or it's like, some of the things like the Assassin's Creed, I'm like, well, I'd rather get this on a console, mostly because I don't want to deal with Ubisoft's Uplay crap.
What an amazing point, and I don't know, Uplay's gotten better, but it's still... Nope. It's still crap. That and the Windows Live thing. I rage every time I start up Street Fighter on my my PC because I hate Windows Live. But I will say that picking up the slack from the Steam sale, the other areas have kind of picked up. Like, Xbox has really realized that Steam's killing them during the holidays, and so they've started doing their own digital sale. Because I bought Street Fighter 3 for, I think, like $4 on there. I bought the new Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows for like $7 on there, and they've had some other really good deals. The problem with their deals is that they go midnight to midnight. It's daily, and I think they're going up to January 1st. But they, with Steam, if you miss a deal, there's still a good chance it could come back, or you could still pick it up because they leave the yesterday stuff on sale for a little while still. Mm-hmm. But with Xbox, that's not the case. And Amazon, as much as Amazon doesn't need anybody else, any more money, I will say this: they have some incredible digital sales right now, and most of their products, especially like the bigger games, you can buy it and then get a Steam code for it and just plug it into your Steam.
Yeah, you have to be careful though. Not all of them are like sometimes I bought a package of games and half of them were on Steam and half of them were on Good Old Games. And so I was like, well, I hate that. I hate Good Old Games. I don't want to use it. So I never even played any of those games.
Good Old Games is one of those things that every now and then I look at and I'm like, man, they have some really good deals. And then, it's sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. And Green Man Gaming is another one that has some okay deals every now and then.
I'll say this: GameStop actually had some good digital deals. That's where I bought Battlefield 4 for like $20.
Are you serious? Really?
Yeah, I bought it for $20 off of that. I was surprised, but they had it for $20 like at GameStop. This is like back at like Black Friday, but I bought it.
Right. No, that's really cool.
So,
I hear they're finally starting to fix their problem. The PC servers are fixed, but I hear the consoles. Their servers were messed up where you pretty much could only play like 1 or 2 games and then everybody was getting kicked off.
Yeah.
Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I don't play much online, so I haven't had to deal with it. I wanted to just go through and play a first-person shooter, so that's why I picked it up, because it was cheap. Right. And if I did want to play online, I could.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's going to be it for this week's episode. Went a little bit longer, but, we had a lot to talk about.
That's true.
All right, so if you want to send us any questions or any comments about what we've discussed, you can email us at comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Steven.
And this has been Comics and Controllers. You guys have a good one.